I'm the head of education at Iris Connect. What on earth does that mean? Well, a lot of the content that you see on our brand new product, UnityEd, which some of you may have had a look at and Andy will talk us through later, is written by me. I strategically lead all of the education output at Iris Connect alongside our founder, Andy Newell, who is on my team. So a lot of the blogs that you see, aside from kind of guest blogs, etc., will be written by me. It's a huge job working at professional development at scale with 3,000 schools. However, it's really, really rewarding. So bizarrely, on top of that, I have another full-time job at the University of Sunderland, where I am the England's only principal lecturer in mentoring and professional development. So I'm in charge of 1,600 mentors at the University of Sunderland. Again, massive job. But what it does afford me is a really fantastic overview of how people learn. You know, what are the effective kind of mechanisms, to use the EEF terms, of professional development and teacher development. Alongside this as well, no, I don't sleep. I also facilitate 8 early career framework groups for UCL and my local teaching school hub. And I also deliver and facilitate the MPQLTD, MPQML, MPQML, and I'm starting the literacy qualification, and that's for Teach First and UCL as well. So I work at literally every facet of the golden thread, if you like, of teacher development, and write books and speak all over the world. So I'm going to talk to you today about using video for mentoring and coaching teachers and how powerful the use of video can be. I've worked for Iris Connect for coming up for 2 years now. I was an English teacher, a middle leader and a senior leader in a school for 16 years. In a secondary, worked in areas of disadvantage. The last sort of 9 years of my career in a school was in an affluent school, but also had real pockets of disadvantage as well, like many of our schools will. And when I was first invited to join Iris Connect and applied for the job as head of education, it was a no-brainer for me because I'd used Iris Connect as a teacher myself and knew the power of video. I knew what was coming up in the ITT market review, which some of you will probably join me for later speaking about as well. And I knew that video was going to play a huge part in that and teacher development and coaching as well. And we're a little bit behind, I would say, in England in terms of the use of video for coaching and mentoring. This is something that's been, you know, just the bread and butter of teacher development in the US, Australia for many, many years as well. So we are kind of a little bit behind the curve. But, you know, lots of different organisations are starting to integrate video as part of their kind of core proposition as well. And it's something that we've been doing actually since about 2007. So it's our bread and butter. It's what we do. So to start off with, how many of you use Iris Connect on a regular basis? Just be interested to see. Okay, great. Now, we know how powerful Iris Connect is. You know, research backs us up as well. This research that you can see there, I'm not going to read it to you, but it's there from Harvard University, talks about how powerful video is, and that, you know, really video-based coaching in itself, it is really that structure which fosters personal reflection and growth and allows us as teachers to discuss our own growth and the growth of others with colleagues as well. But one of the major barriers that we see for teachers who have not engaged with video before and are just starting to engage in it, I think he's summed up really well by Matthew Fox there. So Matthew Fox says, I never watched an episode of Lost. I just really am not comfortable watching myself. So a lot of the teachers who have never used video before, a lot of the trainees, the mentors that I work with, you know, they are not comfortable with watching themselves on video. And don't get me wrong, like I get filmed a lot. I'm interviewed for podcasts, TV broadcasts, etc. I literally cringe at the sound of my own voice, what I look like. Some of you may have seen me on Question Time a couple of weeks ago, which was embarrassing because Fiona Bruce was like, lady with the blue hair, and I got to say something. You know, I thought, oh my God, I don't sound like that. You know, I sound so Mancunian. Do I really sound like that? But actually, once you get over that initial, why did I wear those shoes? Or why do I say, okay, you know, several times in a sentence, video is really, really powerful. So for those of you who are kind of unsure about what we do at Iris Connect and who we are and sort of what research we're based on, we are at heart essentially a collaborative platform. So for many, many years, our kind of core proposition has been sort of video cameras that used to kind of bring in. They looked a bit like Daleks. Does anyone remember that iteration of them? And you were able to film your own video securely, and it was uploaded essentially to our platform that you could then share with others. So remote lesson observation, remote reflection, if you like. That is still a huge part of what we do. We're kind of moving more towards the professional development sphere as well. Our core proposition is very much about collaboration as well. We believe in the power of collaboration, the power of professional learning networks, links very much to what Sonia was talking about earlier on. And many of you will be familiar with this report that you will have seen before. It's a report from the Education Endowment Foundation on what makes effective professional development. And this came out quite a while ago now, actually. I remember it coming out in 2021. And what the EF did was they looked at a huge amount of meta-analysis of what makes effective professional development and teacher learning in schools. And they identified 14 common mechanisms, as they've termed them, that are all kind of present in really effective professional development that has an impact on the way that teachers do things and in turn on student outcomes. And we mapped Iris Connect against these mechanisms, and it has one of every single mechanism, at least in each category. That made sense to us because when Andy Newell first founded the company, it was very much based on some seminal research by Joyce and Showers, who those of you who are a bit older amongst us, like me, will remember that from 2002, which again looked at this idea that, PD can't just be a one shot of somebody like me coming in and telling teachers, no, you've been doing everything wrong, let's do it like this. It has to be followed up by that modelling, that reflection, that checking in, that feedback, that implementation themselves. So we're going to talk about mentoring. Mentoring is something I'm hugely interested in. I wrote a best-selling book called Mentoring in Schools that some of you may have come across before. I speak about mentoring all over the world. And I think it's useful to start out with a definition of mentoring and coaching. And of course, I have called upon the fantastic Professor Rachel Lofthouse here to give this definition. So in a paper that Rachel wrote in 2019, she talks about mentors being that experienced colleague who is there for, more novice colleagues to be able to aspire to be like. They offer clear advice. They might support with target setting. They might pass judgment in relation to kind of how well another teacher is doing. Mentoring has very commonly gone on between kind of an expert teacher and a novice teacher. So many of us will mentor early career teachers, trainee teachers as well. Whereas coaching tended to be more considered as being about personal and professional development. Coaching always was sort of two professionals working together who kind of had an equal partnership. So the coach would, not direct their coachee. They might encourage them to reflect by asking questions. What both of these things have in common, though, mentoring and coaching, is that basically they create that productive space for discussion, for dialogue, for reflection, for that professional conversations, which is so important. Now, there's been a bit of a muddying of these waters, hasn't there, over the last couple of years, I think, especially with the launch of the early career framework in 2021. And I think that's because the early career framework, I'm part of a team that was involved in looking at that document for the Department for Education. It's very much based on an instructional coaching model, and a particular instructional coaching model as well. And again, if you were to type in instructional coaching into Google, you wouldn't be able to see the wood for the trees as to actually what that process is. So, we tend to have kind of two schools of thought. We've got the Jim Knight brand of instructional coaching, which is much more about two colleagues working together as equals, facilitating one another's growth. And then we have the Paul Bambrick-Santoyo model, which is more about an expert working with a novice and directing them to make the changes. And I would say that a great mentor or a great coach would be responsive and would dip in and out of those two approaches anyway, which I think is really important. So, there are differences between mentoring and coaching, but for me it's a little bit of a false dichotomy at times at the moment because of the role that sort of we are working in, especially when we work with novice teachers in teacher development at the moment. Both the core content framework and the early career framework, you would have to dip in between both of these roles to do your role well. So the first thing I want to ask you really to discuss on your tables, and I could probably already guess what you're going to say, but we will see. I'd like you to discuss for a couple of minutes, please, what do you think the barriers are to coaching and mentoring colleagues in your settings? Okay, so 2 minutes. Yeah, I can guess. I almost need a bingo card, don't I? That was the first one. Yeah, number one. Ding, 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 bingo. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the power relationships have been exacerbated by these frameworks as well. I think that's the thing. So, like, for example, you know, many years of mentoring early career teachers, or NQTs as they were, I don't feel like the power dynamic was really ever an expert and a novice, and now that is front and central of everything that we're supposed to be doing, and I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that yet. I don't know.
I think it will raise more issues than it solves.
I agree.
And I think, I'm absolutely with you, that you go up and down.
You do.
A true mentor or a true coach.
I think there are false dichotomy in some ways. You know, I think somebody says, oh, you know, I'm a directive coach. Really? Are you all the time?
Yeah.
What about if you get a novice teacher who's been a higher level teaching assistant for 20 years? What, you're going to direct them in what to do?
Yeah.
You might have been teaching for 3 years.
I think as well, it comes down to actual training for the mentor and the coach around these conversations.
Yeah.
Because whilst you can be an experienced teacher, a subject expert, are you actually the right person?
No, absolutely.
You know, even down to personality and relationships.
Well, you can never be the right person for everything, and this is why, you know, it does take that whole school to mentor a teacher, doesn't it? You can't just do it on yourself. It's not kind of it's a team sport.
Exactly. But it's also getting everybody round to that thinking, you know, and I think about, you know, the school I work in and the different dynamics within teams and things, and I do ITT, CF and loads of stuff, but basically, you know, quite a lot of the time people go, it's your problem, Vicky.
Yeah. And it's like, no, it's not. It's everybody's. It's collective responsibility, isn't it? Yeah.
We exclude very good teachers, but then how they train, how good are they mentoring, how good are they coaching, how can they facilitate that change?
Well, that's why you need to have a mentor curriculum. It can't just be you've been teaching 4 years, 5 years, you can be a mentor. And like the way we've done it at Sunderland, we have a completely comprehensive curriculum for our mentors. So we have like 3 pillars. We have kind of the nuts and bolts, you know, here's how you fill in the paperwork, here's the meetings, etc. We have a pedagogy pillar. So basically all of our mentors are trained in the evidence and the concepts that underpin the early career framework and core content framework, because how can a mentor assist the development of a trainee if they don't know the theories that the trainee is being taught? And then we have the coaching and mentoring.
How deliberate are you in training mentors in terms of like instructional, in terms of
incredibly instructional, I have to say, direct instruction. Yeah.
There's a barrier to that though as well, there isn't there? Because you train up your mentors, then the next year you'll have a different subject specialism, and again, I'm thinking with the early career framework, this is the problem I've faced. You know, something like maths.
Are you primary?
No, I'm secondary.
Oh, okay.
So something like maths specialist. There's maths in terms of the delivery of it is incredibly different to.
Well, the way that
you've got your your generic skills, but there's also subject specific ones.
Well, you're right, and the way that we get around that is we do 30 minutes of generic and then we go into subject specific for 20 minutes.
But then year on year, it's a cost of time, I suppose, isn't it? On top of their mentor time, their time with their, the people they're working with, there's that training time to them. In terms of in the school context, that's quite costly.
Well, you're going to get funded for it from September 2024 because all mentors are going to have to do 20 hours of compulsory training, and all lead mentors are going to have to do 30.
So what was that? 20 hours?
20 hours, of compulsory training. It's part of the market review. So what we're doing as providers is we're going to be doing 20 hours for sort of bog standard mentors. Lead mentors have to do 30. So for the other 10, lead mentors are going to be having training that bridges the MPQ LTD. So they will be being trained to deliver stuff to our other mentors, if that makes sense. So they're looking at like the essential kind of ingredients and the mechanisms of teacher development, and how to deliver that, instructional design, things like that. But schools will be being backfilled for that in terms of finances.
special teacher training?
It's for ITE, not the ECF.
Not the ECF.
Yeah, so the ECF, basically all ITE providers are going to have to ensure that their training is congruent and not repetitive of the ECF.
I'm doing that for Nottingham Uni. So yes,
Okay, so
but not the ECF.
No. So at Sunderland we've developed a passport for our mentors so they don't have to replicate training, so they won't have to do that every year, the 20 hours. They'll be doing refresher training instead, which is 6 hours.
Okay.
Ask me anything about the flaming mentoring. I'm like an encyclopedia, honestly, because it's my job. But so it isn't a cost opportunity really, because it's for 1 year and you're being funded for it. So after that it's 6 hours a year, which if they came to our national mentor conference would be 5 hours.
I work in an independent school, so it's not funded.
Yeah.
So I've got to think of the cost implications for us. So that's really interesting.
I think a lot of independent schools won't have ITE trainees.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, but they won't going forward. I'm in 5 schools a week, so literally hundreds of schools every single year, and loads of independent schools are saying, well, we can't fund that amount of training, so we'll just stop having ITE.
Well, we can't. There's no teachers out there, so we have to have them.
Yeah. But you still get funded for ECF though, right?
No, we don't.
Oh, wow. See, this is going to put schools off completely. So I've had loads of schools coming back to me, because I deliver like 5 keynotes a week all over the world, and loads of schools have come back to me and said, like, basically, we're just not going to take ITE trainees because we can't afford to let our mentors go for 20 hours a year, whereas the early career framework is statutory. This isn't. Does that make sense? So a lot of schools are just like, we're not going to be doing it. So we've all written to the DFE and advised them it's going to be massive issues.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's quite complicated for us, but we have to invest in early careers because there's not enough teachers.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an English specialist, so very very similar. But and I am a statistic of somebody who left the profession 18 months ago, and probably wouldn't go back now, because why would I when I'm about to be made a professor at my institution? That's like my dream. So, and I didn't leave because I was a disgruntled teacher, like you see many people who've just had it up to here with teaching and want to leave. I loved my job, but I was given an opportunity and thought, if I don't take this now, I'm going to regret it. And there's lots of people like me who've been senior leaders, middle leaders, and are just thinking, there's got to be more out there, for me to explore that gives me a bit of freedom, sort of professionally. So yeah, it's a difficult one.
So do you see, because I work with the early careers teachers as well, and they are feeling like that they only get a 10% reduction.
Yes.
It's more than 10%
It is.
worth
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
So although that was seen as a retention thing,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's working in the way that.
Well, I can only talk anecdotally. So I've got 8 ECF groups. So how many ECTs is that? Say there's 20 in a group. My maths is really bad. So a lot of ECTs, and I would say probably a third of mine have left who were in the second year. Yeah, and I reckon.
So going
Yeah.
first, second.
Yeah.
Left professional. Left.
Yeah, and just said I'm not doing this.
Who's your hub?
East Manchester. So it's in Oldham, yeah, third. And from what I speak to, because I present at like teaching school hubs all the time, they're all saying similar things, that they've had quite a large dropout rate.
So I run UCF for our trust.
Yeah.
We've got 100.
Yeah.
But that is a lot.
Yeah.
And we're struggling to. Our biggest mentors.
Yeah.
Mentors just don't want to do it.
Oh, snap. Yeah, I mean, I've got 1,600 mentors. Can you even imagine? Like, it's like.
Do you know what I do?
Yeah, ours don't. Yeah, ours don't. Completely and utterly.
When you've got things, we use instructional coaching as a trust, and we want to make our mentors more instructional.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
really strong.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
the stuff we do in house actually respond to much better. But the ECF and the right space work has to do with teaching
Yeah.
first.
Oh, I deliver for Teach First as well, and we work with Teach First. So yeah.
And the mentor engagement
Yeah.
is the hardest
Yeah.
thing.
Well, all Teach First trainees get Iris Connect accounts, so they upload like literally thousands of reflections every week at Teach First.
So I did Teach First about 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah,
Changed a lot.
I think we've been partnered with them about 3 years. Have we Teach First? 2 years? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But Ruben Moore, who used to be the director, wrote the foreword for my book, and he's like amazing. I really rate Teach First. I think they're fantastic, but I think a lot's changed over the time that you've been.
Oh God, we've been
Yeah, you would have been maybe one of the first cohorts then. Was it about 15 years? Teach First has been going 16 years. Was it even longer than that? 20? Oh, of course, I saw actually. Yeah. Amy Mitchell was telling me. But yeah, so maybe you were like midway. Yeah. I think they're amazing. They get a bad press from a lot of people, but like having worked with them on kind of with my Iris Connect and doing other things with the DFE as well, I think they're superb. Really, really good. They've got an amazing bunch of people working there. Yeah. Okay, so I actually wish we would have had a bingo card, if I'm completely honest, because I need to make one now, because I tell you what, the number one on my bingo card, what do you think it would be? Time, yes. And we've just been having a conversation about this, and for those of you who are coming to my talk a little bit later on, which is more specific about the ITT market review, those of us who have been immersed, or should I say drowning in that process over the last couple of years, will know that mentor training is going to get even more intensive, because from 2024 onwards, all mentors, and I'm talking bog standard subject mentors, not particular lead mentors or anything else, are going to have to do 20 hours of training. Now, they're not going to have to do 20 hours of training every single year if they've already done the training. After that, it will go to refresher training, which is 6 hours. But 20 hours is still a big undertaking, isn't it? And actually, at the University of Sunderland, where I work as well as here, we've started ours already. We trialled it this year just to see what it was like. Difficult is the word. We're talking to a colleague at the back, mentors just haven't got time actually, and don't turn up to the training, etc. And it's not because they're lazy or anything like that, because we know our mentors work incredibly hard. They just have not got the capacity to come to that much training. And if you're a lead mentor, so lead mentors don't really exist at the moment. They're not induction tutors. They're different from induction tutors. A lead mentor looks after mentors in a regional area. If you're a lead mentor, you have 30 hours of training every single year. So it's going to be massive. So time is a huge constraint, isn't it? Massive, massive constraint. Anything else that anybody wants to add apart from time?
We talked about power relationships.
Yes.
And in relation to who your mentor or who your coach is, and how that might impact on your confidence to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And to be open and honest and sharing your feelings. So picking up what Rachel was saying in the previous one, around, well, how does it make you feel? Well, are you really going to tell your line manager that actually you're really hacked off? And if it's a good line manager, they'll already know and they'll be putting support in. But actually, how do you go around that?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the work of Andy Hobson. He made the on-side mentoring model, which I think is a fantastic mentoring model, and it talks about, especially with the early career framework, that our mentors shouldn't be the ones that are judge mentoring us. The line management responsibility, if you're mentoring an ECT, should be separate. I know that is easier to do in subjects like maths or English when there's a lot of teachers. However, if you're in a subject such as art, for example, where there might only be you and an ECT in your department, who's going to mentor this trainee or this other ECT? It's got to be the head of department, because there's nobody else. So that can be quite difficult. So that power dynamic is massive. And I think this comes down to this whole idea of kind of expert and novice, doesn't it? And, I remember when that kind of language was first used about 6 or 7 years ago, when I did a psychology master's, so I was very familiar with kind of cognitive science, etc. But when I trained many, many moons ago in the early 2000s, that cognitive science wasn't even part of your teacher training. It was very much the domain of psychology, and has now quite rightly been brought forward to education, so that we actually understand the way that our instruction should differ for the children that are in front of us. But I think the problem with that expert and novice thing is that if you see, it can be quite a deficit model in some ways, and it's hard. sometimes we get trainees or ECTs from all different walks of life, some with experience that they've already had that is really relevant to teaching. A classic example is when I was leading professional development in my school as an assistant head, I had a higher level teaching assistant of 20 odd years who became an ECT. And was mentored by somebody who'd been teaching for 3 years. And of course, it's not about time served, but what we have to realise is that those people who've served time in the classroom, in the schools, in other roles, will already have webs of really specific knowledge and mental models that mean that they might not need that direct instruction that we might give to more novice learners. And I also like to think of the word expert as being expertise as well, rather than an expert in everything, because nobody is. And I think as a profession we're really cautious about using the word expert sometimes, but actually, you know, if you think of other fields, you know, if I was lying on a surgeon's table with somebody about to put me under for an operation, and the guy, and you know, I said, oh, I'm really glad I've got an expert surgeon doing this, and the expert surgeon said, oh well, I won't call myself an expert, you know, I'd panic, I'd scream and run off the table. If I was on a plane and a pilot introduced himself and said, you know, I'm your pilot today, I'm not really an expert in flying, I'd be running off there as fast as you could. So we have a problem in teaching with that word, I think, and it's because we are a profession who is encouraged to be quite internal and reflective, and would never feel quite good enough. We're never going to be the experts in everything. That's why it takes a whole school to mentor new teachers, not just one person. So it's really important. So how can we help with this? You know, why is video so powerful? Well, I'm going to show you, I'm not sure whether all of you have seen our new platform interface. Is it going to come on? There you go. Have all of you seen this new interface logging on? So sort of the 3 main things that I would use our platform for. Obviously the first one is the bread and butter of what we do. So it's the reflections. So we're observing at distance our ECTs, our trainees. You can see lots of pictures of Rico with headphones on there. Can you see Rico? Because I am not no longer a classroom teacher. Lots of mine are meetings. So you can see I look really like I'm concentrating in some of them, listening. So all my reflections will be uploaded to there. I know what the cover implications are like at schools at the moment with long-term sick. We've not been able to recruit sufficient teachers, etc. My own school in the village that I live in, that I was at for nearly 10 years, has asked me to come back about 15 times, so they must be desperate, put it that way. So, you know, I know how hard cover implications are in school, so that ability to actually use the camera to observe at distance is so valuable. And then obviously you have the time link comments, where you can choose to comment on a really granular specific area of the lesson as well, so that very often I used to hate being observed or observing somebody and jotting something down, and then there's that forgetting, isn't there, that goes on before you can give them the feedback, and you're trying to explain what they did in the observation and what they need to change, and they're unable to make that abstract feedback concrete. So by using our time link comments and literally commenting on the exact moment, when that video plays, it lights up the comment when that precise moment is there. So you've got that really concrete model of what went on there that you can have a conversation about. You can observe the lesson that they record at any time. So you don't, you know, you can do it straight after the lesson rather than very often rushing to another lesson and then seeing them at the end of the day or the next day. And you can really open a rich dialogue on there. So you can write a question that's linked to a specific time on the video, they can reply, etc. So that's one of the main parts I would use for mentoring. It's really powerful. Sometimes I would ask my mentee or coachee to watch it separately from me and leave their own comments and reflections, and then I would leave comments and reflections on what they'd left, and then we would come together and watch it together and pause it and deconstruct it and discuss it as well. So really powerful for that. Another tool we have is the show reel, so the ability to edit down clips as well and put them into a show reel. For me as a mentor or a coach, that is incredibly powerful because it's really motivating. So you get to demonstrate to your coachee or your mentee the progress that they have made. So you know, if you're working on something really granular and specific, like for example, has anyone read Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov? I often use the sort of the language from there because we use it at Sunderland. Say somebody was using the strategy stretch it, so higher level questions. You know, we could make a show reel of stretch it and see how incremental progress has been made. Very motivating. We could use the show reel to piece together expert teachers' examples of particular strategies and deconstruct those as models as well. So, you know, our kind of core proposition is that reflections. Another thing that I found so useful for mentoring using video is the groups functions. So you can see some of the groups there. This is a recent workshop that my colleague Vesna, who you met earlier, and I delivered at the British School of Brussels a few weeks ago. And we created this group with lots of video exemplars of practice, activities, discussion boards. You can share research on them. So if we think about what we were talking about before of that subject specificity of generic pedagogic strategies, you could create a specific maths group, a specific English group, a specific EYFS group, etc., where you can really hone in on what makes that strategy different and special in your subject. So you can share all sorts of things, reflections, videos, research, etc. in those. So I utilise these a lot for mentoring and coaching colleagues. They're a really, really valuable space. And we also have forms as well, which are linked to our reflections. We have, say, for example, you were focusing on questioning and wait time with your mentees or coachees. You could watch a video together or separately and use a form to record what the wait time was and then discuss that. Use a form to record how many students have been cold called. Use a form to analyse the different types of questions that were asked. The uses are limitless, basically. You could use them for so many things. So that's kind of the very brief overview of how I would use it. Another way, and I'm not going to go through this too much because I'm going to steal Andy's thunder for this later on, but is our new UnityPD proposition. Many of our trainees will be struggling with very similar strategies in our classrooms. We've taken 6 key instructional strategies from the EEF's Teaching and Learning Toolkit and Evidence-Based Education's great teaching toolkit as well. These are sort of 6 common instructional strategies that trainees or any teacher actually might struggle with. And these are our instructional palette. These aren't the finished product by any imagination. We're going to update these and add other ones. We're already working with I think it might be Josh actually, is it Harry, to do a special educational needs one. We're looking to work with some of our other partners to do EYFS ones, so we're hoping to get a real kind of varied and wide instructional palette. At Iris Connect, we're very much of the opinion that an experienced teacher doesn't need to be told what they should be doing. Some of our novice teachers, our ECTs, our trainees might need help and facilitation and signposting by mentors, but they will have this instructional palette in front of them, and as they gain that automaticity, the secure mental models, they'll be able to choose themselves from a valid range of different instructional strategies. So inside these, the behaviour group, for example, we have a theory group here that you can click on, and inside this theory group, we kind of set it out into 2 different camps, if you like. We're not about factions at Iris Connect, hence the UnityPD title today. I think how many of you are on Twitter? Yeah, you might be forgiven for thinking that we're going to war, progs versus trads, etc., but actually we're all just professionals trying to do the best for our kids. So in our behaviour group, we take 2 different approaches, and teachers can choose their own, whichever suits them. So we always have a video by a teacher, a classroom teacher or an educational consultant. We've got Clive Hill here, who some of you might follow on Twitter. He writes a lot and speaks about behaviour. And then we introduce 2 different styles of behaviour management. So we have warm strict, which is very much taken from Doug Lamov's work in Uncommon Schools. We talk about what warm strict is. We break it down into kind of tangible, concrete strategies that can be used in the classroom. We give video exemplifications of some of those strategies in action for people to have a look at and bridge the gap between theory and practice. And then we have a part where we're actually applying that to our learning, where people get the chance to actually discuss what they think about this video. We extend this discussion with the offer to come to one of our film clubs as well, on these particular different categories, these instructional strategies, where we watch 2 or 3 film clips and discuss them collaboratively in a professional learning network. They're really valuable. You can register for them by clicking on the link that we just saw on there before onto our Eventbrite page. So they're all free completely. I facilitate some of those. Andy does, Harry does at the back as well. Give a wave, Harry. There's Harry. So you will meet many of our colleagues facilitating those, and they're so valuable. We had some independent research done, and the results that came back from them, from the teachers, was just so positive. So what do those strategies look like? We give some tangible strategies that teachers can use. And then we go into our other approach, which is restorative practice. And again, we're being binary here. Most great teachers will flick between the 2 styles of behaviour management. I don't think they're opposites. I think they complement one another. And we have restorative practice expert Mark Finnis talking about that. So that's kind of the format that our groups take. I'm not going to spend too long talking about that, because I can see Andy peeking in and he's thinking, hang on, you're doing my bit. So I would use those as a mentor, because what I would do is I would have discussions after an observation and sort of co-constructing a target for my mentees or coaches. And then I might say, why don't we go away, have a look at this group, and come back and we'll discuss X, Y, and Z. So it's that triangulation with research. We then might watch the videos of practice together in a mentor or a coaching meeting, and we might deconstruct those videos, come up with a plan together. You can see how valuable those groups would be. Alongside that, we also have our pathways, which are our frameworks essentially for working with somebody else or on your own to reflect on your own practice. So if any of you have got mentors who are inexperienced, we were talking before, weren't we, about the importance of a mentor curriculum. Research tells us that a great teacher doesn't necessarily make a great mentor. They're 2 distinct skill sets. They could follow one of our pathways. We have different pathways. So we've stuck away from kind of instructional coaching, haven't we, Andy, and all the sort of different iterations of what that means that are out there, or what approach you go for. But we have like a skills coaching, a facilitative coaching, a dialogic coaching, a reflection pathway. So there's lots of different ways that you can follow, dipping in and out of these instructional palettes. And the great thing for those of us who are leading teacher development, do you want to say something? Oh yeah, that's fine. The great thing for those of us who are who are leading professional development at scale, like myself, a couple of colleagues at the back, etc., is that you can actually track what your trainees and mentors are working through. So there's like a little bar for the pathways. I think I've started working through. Yeah, there you go. You can see me there reflecting. I've not done much reflection. I've been speaking at schools every single day, but I need to get on it. Andy might be my coach and be saying to me, how are you getting on with that? So you can see there I've done 10% of my reflective pathway for behaviour. So you can actually track how people are doing and have conversations with them about that as well. So, there are just a few of the ways that I might actually use our platform to actually be able to mentor and coach in a really great way. So how does all of that link to mentoring and coaching? Now, there's a woeful lack of research on sort of what are the successful mechanisms, if you like, of mentoring. There's much more on coaching. I've read hundreds and hundreds of papers. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, I have a pinned post on my timeline of mentor research digests, where I've literally done 1-pagers of the hundreds of papers that I've read on mentoring. And I think I've come up with a reasonable 5, what I would say, kind of active ingredients, high leverage actions that mentors and coaches can do to help new teachers develop. So reflection and discussion is obviously massively important. Observations and modelling is a big part of it as well, and it's also that kind of metacognitive explanations that go alongside the modelling. Feedback and targets, making them granular, but also articulating the how for those colleagues who need it, as well as the what, is really important. The amount of times I've been told, ask better questions. What does that even mean? you know, so it's about that how, making it as granular as possible, the rehearsal with expert feedback, and then the collaboration as well, so the working in professional learning networks. And really, I suppose our role as a mentor is to bridge that gap between theory and practice, and I think video is a fantastic way of doing that. So a couple of examples of things we could do to finish off. We might watch a video, as I said before, and use the comment feature on our platform to analyse the strategies that the teacher deployed and explicate together through dialogue and discussion how those strategies were achieved. We might also watch a video together and undergo some discussions and collective reflection on behaviour management strategies. That for me is one of the things trainees and new teachers struggle on massively with. I used to myself every September of getting new classes. Focus on what you're both noticing, reflect and discuss. I really like the framework from Rolf, Freshwater and Jasper. What, so what and now what can work really well for that. We could watch the mentor questioning the class on the video as a model. They could film their lesson, and the mentor could provide an instructional explanation over the video, pausing it, pointing out things, where they deconstruct how they did things, discussing each part and providing that mentee with the opportunity to rehearse doing it themselves afterwards. So you can see, you know, it fits in really, really well with what I think those effective mechanisms are for mentoring. And as always, I've run out of time. I was going to show you a video typical of one of our mentors. But if anybody's got any questions, it'd be great to get them now. We do offer lots of other support. I wrote some ECT guides last year, which have been downloaded thousands of times, haven't they, Rico, I think? Or am I over-egging myself? Is it hundreds? Who knows? But they're aligned to the early career framework, so they take the same standards in the same order that the early career framework takes, so starts with 1 and 7 and has really tangible strategies for using video for each of those standards in there. And just worth pointing out as well that, you know, this isn't just me as an Iris Connect employee saying it's really powerful. We just had some research conducted, a study of teacher coaching based on classroom videos, and that was with the US Department of Education's Institute for Education Sciences, and they did an absolutely huge study. It's one of the biggest studies that's been done of using video in classrooms and the impact on students, and the results were absolutely unbelievable. So video-based teacher coaching improved student achievement by an equivalent of an additional 2+ months worth of instruction, so it's well worth doing. What we're all in the classroom for at the end of the day is helping our students get the best possible outcomes, and I'm a great believer that video is a fantastic tool for mentoring early career teachers. So thank you so much for listening.